And welcome to Crochet Hooks. Please enjoy our free tutorials with just one of a 24-part series on teaching you how to crochet. Subscribe to start receiving our 24 courses that are delivered to your email inbox every few days. By the time you're done, you'll know the ins and outs of crochet. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. So now let's get crocheting with Curtsy. And welcome to lesson number 7, and in today's lesson we're going to actually deviate from what I said in lesson number 6. We're actually going to start changing colors within your work. That is a really common thing. How do you do it without making really ugly knots and then your loose ends actually hanging out? And I'm going to show you how to change colors without knots. And then finally, like I promised in lesson number 6, I'm going to show you how to cast off and finish off your project so that you have no loose ends at all. So this one is about hiding in your loose ends, being able to change color without showing that, and being able to complete it so that it looks really professional, so you really can't tell where you're changed colors because there's going to not be any knots. So that's what we got for lesson number 7. In this tutorial we're going to still use our Sugar and Cream. This is by Lily, and we're going to be doing a color change, and we're going to switch over to the Bernat Softy Chunky line. So here's where we left off. We were doing a double treble, or we were doing triple crochet, however you want to refer it. And what I want you to do is that I want you to pull out the last stitch. So if you ever made a mistake, you can just pull it out. So let's pull it right out, just one, and put our hook back in. And what we want to do is we want to be able to change colors without knots. You got to remember that crochet is about knot making. These are almost knots in themselves, and when you tug in the wrong direction they tighten on to each other, which is almost like a knot, right? So let's begin again. So we're going to wrap and into the final that we had, pull through, and what I want you to do is that I want you to pay attention here. So we're going to pull through 2 and 2, so that we got the final 2 on the hook. So even if this was double crochet or anything like that, we want to make sure that we have the 2 left on here. We don't want to finish the stitch. What we want to do then is just trim. So getting your scissors, my scissors are by Westcott. We're just going to clip, and we're going to grab our next color. And here is the Bernat Softy Chunky. What I like to do with myself is that I like to actually create a slip knot. So let's review that again. So pointing, wrap and wrap. Okay, this is the back of my hand forward, take the back over the forward, take this one up and over. Remember, we've already covered that before. And what we want to do is that we just want to slip on the slip knot right here. Okay, and we want to pull that through the final 2. So now what we have is we have the new string that's going to the ball, we have the string that's dangling here, which is just loose, and we also have the new string dangling. So we actually have 2 strings dangling and 1. So let's begin. So I'm going to show you, we're going to actually do double crochet up. Okay, so here we go. So when we double crochet, if you remember, it was always chain 3. So 1, 2, and 3. And here's where you need to pay attention. The next stitch is just the next one, right? It's just jumping over. And when we wrap this one, because we're going to wrap that, we want to slide underneath these 2 stragglers, the 2 loose ends, and put it into the stitch. So then this yarn is coming out on top, and these 2 are lying over top of the other stitch. Do you see that? So what we want to do then is that when we go to grab this and pull through, that action right there has just trapped in these 2 right into the stitch. So let's begin to double crochet as normal. So 2 and 2. Okay, so let's do it again. So wrap, and this is now facing out the right direction. We're going to slip underneath them. So we're just going to lay these on top, pull through 2 and 2. So wrap in, they're still lying on top, pull through 2 and 2. So wrap. So I recommend that you at least try to go 2 inches to 3 is the better. The more you go, the better. And the way that the stitches are working right now, you really can't see that that's even sitting in there, can you? So it's kind of a really great trick. So every time you go in, you just leave them on top, and they get secured into each section right at the bottom there. When you think you have enough, in there, you simply can just grab your scissors. You can do this afterward. You don't have to do it right on the spot, as long as you do it at one point and just want to trim it. Take those out and just keep on going. So what's going to happen is when you tug on these, that's just going to tuck right in. You really can't see it, and we just double crochet ourselves. So you could have done that with single crochet, double trebles, triple crochet, half double crochet. You do it with every one, and you just move along on your project. And basically that is how you change colors on the edges. When you change a lot of colors, it kind of gets annoying after a while to be able to do that all the time, but it really is worth the effort. Changing colors like that is something that I've just started doing 3 years ago. I used to have these god ugly knots on the edges of my work, and you try to deny that they're there, but they're there, and it's hard to control them better, and you start getting frayed and loose ends hanging out, which is quite a problem within itself. So with double crochet, we're just going to turn and again work our way up. So 1, 2, 3, and this post matches that post, and we just automatically go into the next one. So let's go all the way to the end, and I'm going to just move the camera forward in time, and what we want to just do is we want to cast off, and I'm going to show you how to do that without tying excessive ugly knots and being able to hide in the loose end. So here's the trick to casting off. So we're coming to the end of our project where we're going to actually cast off, and I'm going to just start it here instead of just being at the end. It just makes a lot more sense. And again, you're looking for your post to match. So if I ended it now, you'll have this piece sticking out. So going into the side piece, remember, and we want to stop. So we're now done this project. So let's learn how to hide that. So what I recommend is that I take the scissors and I take it over my hand, and these are my Westcott scissors, and I'm just going to take them over my hand and trim. Okay, so you don't see any knots yet, and using your crochet hook you just want to pull up. So you're going to pull that right out. So then look, when I pull on that, it doesn't decrease nothing, it doesn't do anything. And what I want to just do is that I want to just slip it into my 2 fingers like so and let it drape over. And I want to stick in my crochet hook into the same stitch like that. So because this is coming out of that stitch, I'm just going to grab the string and pull it through. But you notice that I'm still holding the string here. So I'm just going to grab a portion of it, and what I want to just do is I want to slip this through that loop, and I want to pull it down like that. Okay, so now all you have to do is that just working your way across. This is the next stitch on the line, just working your way across, pulling it through. Okay, and so now this side, I'm going to come in from the other side like that, and I'm going to pull that through. This is called weaving, and what I want to just do is that I want to make sure that these stitches, this string stays hidden, so I'm actually weaving it underneath the stitches. And I want to do this for at least 2 to 3 inches. So just back and forth. Now before you trim this now, you're going to have excess left over. You want to pull this, because people tend to pull on things. So if you pull it now before trimming that, you know where the absolute maximum pull is going to be doing. So you can safely now trim this right at that same spot, because you know that if anybody pulls any further, it's not going to fall out, and therefore it's hidden right into position. And so you can see that I used different yarn when I switched over. So because the yarn was somewhat thicker, you can see that it kind of looks a little more bulkier at the top. So if I would have used this similar yarn to do the casting off, it would have been a lot more consistent as well. So your yarn does really matter. Coming back into the bottom part here, we have, this is what was our starting, and again just using the same technique that we just did. This is already in a knot, so we don't have to secure that any further, but we just want to weave this like we just did with the first one. You could have already done this already too before. You don't have to wait to the end of your project to be able to weave this in. So this kind of ideas, I like to do the final trimming or the final corrections when I do my projects, to do this at the end. And what we want to do, again, just like before, I want to stretch it before I cut it, and I can safely cut it there. And voila, you have a project with no loose ends hanging out and virtually no knots. Hopefully for many of you, you didn't get too confused when changing your colors. That is actually a technique that a lot of people really struggle with because they're concerned about the actual knots falling apart. And you should be aware that crochet is simply just tying material together in order to really create the patterns that it is. And so when you do it in the method that I'm showing, even though you'll go to stretch your material, the string is just tightening upon itself so that you can be rest assured so that it will not fall apart. But if you got some kids that you think that may get a little bit rough, by all means you can throw a knot and still hide it in that way. So let's move along into lesson number 8, and I'm going to talk to you about patterns and how to understand patterns and how to read them more essentially. So let's schedule you for lesson number 8 when we go to learn how to read patterns. On behalf of Curtsy Crochet, I'm your host.